Hi, everyone. This is Where We Land, a podcast bringing you stories of immigration and multicultural identity. I'm Claudia.
And I'm Luciana. We're sisters, and we're originally from Peru, but now we live in the U.S.
In today's episode, we talked about code switching, what it is, what experiences we've had with it, and what it costs.
We also talk about espresso martinis, theft, over-the-counter medication, early bird specials, and Wonderbread.
Before we begin, if you'd like to tell us your immigration story or share a culture clash flashback of your own or any kind of current favorite cultural thing from back home, you can write to us at wherewelandpod@gmail.com and we might share your story on the show. So once again, that's wherewelandpod@gmail.com. Can't wait to hear from you guys. Here's our conversation.
Let's begin with Culture Clash Flashback. This is a culture clash we experienced in our past. Mine is dinner times. Okay. And this is kind of come full circle for me because, I mean, we, as a Peruvian family growing up here, kind of always kept the Peruvian dinner time of like 8 p.m.
Yeah,
you know?
okay.
And then when we, moved back to Peru, that was the norm. And then when I moved back here as an adult in, 2014, I'm going to grad school. Maybe students have kind of like a weird schedule. So you're just eating dinner. I was eating dinner
if
like
you're
around
eating
8.
dinner, I mean, let's be
If you're
real.
eating dinner.
Yeah.
But like, at home, like I'm never going to have dinner before 7:45, 8 p.m. realistic on my own. And then I join like the workforce, and then I meet my husband, and then I meet more Americans. And then I'm realizing, these people like to have dinner like at a good healthy 7. And I say healthy because I actually do think they're on to like who wants to go to bed full?
7, you're scraping it.
Right,
You're scraping.
right.
7
No,
is
no, no.
barely nighttime. Like when someone
It's
is like
kinda-
6 p.m. dinner, I'm like, that's not dinner, honey. That's an afternoon snack.
That is an afternoon. Exactly. So
Early bird
and
special.
now,
People love
then
it
when I
here.
moved to DC, people are like 6 p.m. And then with kids, like that's why I say it's come full circle, because now with kids, I appreciate a 6 p.m. dinner time at this stage in my life with very young kids. I think that this will move up as
that
my
makes
kids
sense.
get older. I was just blown, like it blew my mind that Americans wanted to eat any time before 8 p.m. Like, what do you do? Why is there a reservation available at a restaurant for dinner?
I never liked it either. I never understood it until because when we were growing up in California, it was like, we've talked about this. Like we went to school and there was lunch at school, but we then had our real lunch when we got back from school, like around 2 p.m., which is Peruvian lunchtime.
Yeah.
So I never noticed like that our times were that off. And then once I've been here as an adult and I'm like, people eat lunch at 12. That's why they're hungry at 6. Because they're having lunch at 12. I'm like, what time are you having breakfast? If I have breakfast at 9, how am I eating at 12? What are we doing? I don't understand that.
It's crazy town. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, no, to this day, I fight against it. Like my lunchtime is 2 p.m. Never having lunch at 12.
But that's because you're not in an office. Because if you went to an office and you would just there's meetings happening at 2 p.m.
Yeah,
Lunch has been had.
I get to pick my lunchtime and I love it. And also, I've noticed you getting on the early bird train because every time I go to DC, dude, I'm like, dinner reservations, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. And you're like, 9 p.m.? No. That's like way too late. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Grandma?
It's come for a circle with the kids now, like that I enjoy this early. And I do see like, again, who wants to go to bed full? Like, especially if you're having like a long dinner. I see the benefits. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying like, I think that once my kids are no longer little, I will not be having dinner at 6:30 p.m. anytime. Like 7:30 onward, I think.
I hope so. I hope you jump back into my bandwagon because I'm waiting for you. I'm like, when you come to visit me in New York, when your kids are not here, Lucy, you're still like, 9 p.m. is too late, Claudia. Don't make reservations at 9 p.m.
9 p.m. is too late. 9 p.m.
9 p.m. is fun time. If someone is inviting me to dinner at 9 p.m., I'm like, we're going to get drinks. We're going to have some fun. If someone is like, dinner at 6:30, I'm like, fuck, we're not having drinks. We're not having fun.
I would say 7:30. ideal. 9 p.m. is way too late. 6 p.m. is way too early. 7:30 is
For
ideal.
me, 8 is ideal.
You can still have a nice long dinner and some drinks after and get to bed at a reasonable time.
Agree to
That's
disagree,
the wave I'm at.
I guess. Agree to disagree. Can't wait till your kids grow up so we can get back on it. Anyway, my culture clash flashback is a story I've told you before, but the listeners need to enjoy it as well. Putting my purse on the floor of a car.
Oh,
Yeah. So
been there, done that.
Yes.
100 times, 1,000 times.
So when I was living in Spain, right, this guy was going to take me to a lake nearby because I was living in Madrid. Madrid doesn't have any beaches. So we were going to go spend the day at a lake, right? We were going with a whole bunch of friends. So he comes, he picks me up in the morning in his car. And we put all the stuff away, like in the trunk. And then I just have my little tiny purse. And then when I go sit in the passenger seat, I automatically put my purse on the floor like any good Peruvian girl would do.
Right.
And the guy looks at me and he's like, oh, you dropped your purse. And I was like, oh, no, it's fine. And he's like, oh, no, you're going to get your purse dirty. Like, if you want, we can put it in the back seat, or if you don't want to carry it. And I was like, since he said it again, I kind of like picked up my purse, but I was like, no, actually, it's okay. And he's like, but it's the floor. Like, why would you want your purse on the floor? Everyone's feet go there. People step on that. It's going to get dirty. Right. And the wheels started turning in my head. And I was like, I just answered his question because he was like, why would you want it on the floor? And I said, oh, I put it there so people won't steal it. And he's like, we're inside my car. I'm not going to steal it. And I'm like, no, not you. And then I had to finish the sentence. And I was like, not you, like strangers that can like break our window and snatch it out of my hands. And he's like, looked at me like, where the fuck do you come from, girl?
Well, I'm surprised. I kind of thought, I guess I kind of would have assumed the same thing in Spain, to be honest.
No, because you forget that Spain is the developed world. They don't have, like, there's crime for sure. But he was like, people here, if they're going to rob you, they're going to wait until you're distracted and take something from you. He's like, no one is going to physically, like, harm you for a purse. Like, that's too low stakes here. Like, no, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, I just felt like the like unknowing immigrant who like came from the uncivilized world where she was like expecting to be like physically
like, I must hang on to this or I must hide it from everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I get like in New York, even like my first year, I would grab my purse and I would put it underneath and then like halfway through I'd be like, what am I doing? Or like as I'm doing, I would be like, or put up my window.
Right.
So they would have to break it and not just stick their hand.
Yeah. Because you don't want to be a sitting duck. You know what the streets are like.
No, I'm like, purse is under. And then I'm like, what am I doing? That's not how it works here. You can walk with like your purse in your hand here. You don't have to hold it like this.
You can walk with your cell phone in your hand distractedly. No one's going to snatch it from you. You can put jewelry on. Listen, when I was able to put, I was like, I'm going to walk around New York City with my jewels on? My jewels? Are you kidding me? Really? Like in Peru, everyone's like, your engagement ring, you'd have to flip that thing over or put it away if you're walking down certain streets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
no, it's crazy.
I felt like an uncivilized savage. And I was like, oh, God. Now it's time for our topic of the week. This week, we want to talk about code switching. The term code switching, I think, is something everyone has heard. It's definitely something that doesn't just apply to immigrants, but it's something that as immigrants, we've had to do a whole lot. I did a little research on this
Wikipedia.
No, that's not how I research. AI.
ChatGPT. Okay.
Well, I used AI, but I also used I'm kind of old school. I really like reading papers, finding academic papers.
Right. You went to the library.
I totally did. The online library, that is.
Right.
But anyway, I want to read a little bit about what code switching is so that we understand it. And then I want to get into some examples of that we've experienced in our everyday lives of code switching. And then I have some bonus information for us as well.
Oh, you're going to educate us.
Totally. Educating. Yes. I'm giving Gyan. Yeah. Okay, that was the nerdiest thing I've
ever
said.
Early listeners.
If you're a fan of the pod, you know what I'm saying. All right. So the term code switching was coined in the 1950s by the linguist Einar Haugen. And he used it originally to describe people's ability to move between languages and dialects. So basically, how you speak differently depending on what cultural group you're interacting with, right?
Yeah.
So you'll change up your slang, you'll change up your dialect, your pronunciation of certain words, depending on who you're speaking to, right? And then as time went on, other fields started to study code switching as well. So like sociologists got in the mix and anthropologists, and they expanded the meaning of code switching. And so they expanded it to mean now anytime people temporarily alter or adjust their behaviors to optimize the comfort of others.
Right.
And perhaps achieve a desired outcome or avoid being negatively stereotyped. Right? So under this definition, a lot of things become code switching. For example, like going by a different name, right? Like we heard in our interview with Michelle Mijong Kim. That's code switching. Changing your hairstyle, depending on where you are, that's code switching.
For sure.
Downplaying aspects of your cultural identity or racial identity, that's all code switching.
Yep.
So I feel like there's a lot of things in that definition that me and you have both fallen into.
For sure. I'm like, yep, done.
Exactly.
Done.
So I wonder if you could share some of those. What are some of yours?
Yeah, I mean, trying to relate, trying to be part of what you said about like making others comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, is just something I think that we've been doing from the beginning. I'll say I've been doing from the beginning of time here. And it's funny, like, I just want to say, like, I see that kind of basic human instinct even in like the playground with my kids. Like, as you were talking about the definitions, I'm like, okay, toddlers, you know, before they're even able to speak to other toddlers, they're kind of just like, they copy what the other one is doing, you know, kind of like just as a sense of like, hey, we're the same, you know? So like if one goes, ah, the other one goes, ah, you know, and they're just like, all right, like, I don't know, like a way to kind of just like connect.
Yeah, it's a bit for connection, but
communication, socialization. When we moved back to Peru after living in the U.S. in childhood, we obviously had adopted some American trends that maybe had not caught up to Peru. I don't know if you remember this, but do you remember those white sneakers that Baby Spice would wear?
Yeah, the platformed ones.
The platform
we
white
had
sneakers. We had them. We rocked them in Visalia, California. Like,
we were cool.
You know, we were so cool. Get to Peru, no one's using them.
No, hadn't arrived to Peru yet. No.
They're like, why are your sneakers so white? Also, why do they have heels? And I'm pulling out my CD with the Spice Girls.
Yeah.
Like, or just like trying, and this is before the internet. Things took longer to catch on, or like before social media, and you know.
It took so long.
Cool.
Yeah. So long for trends to arrive to Peru.
And I just remember like just not wearing the sneakers anymore. These sneakers that had brought us so much joy.
Yeah.
And we just like, bye, you know? Like, it was probably, I just, that example came because I remember just like people judging them right away. Like, there was something just, it was just not a thing. And so I ditched them faster, you know, like so fast. It was just not great, you know, like, all right.
We wanted, hey, we were cool kids and we were in a new atmosphere
and we wanted
to, well, and those sneakers weren't cool. In Trujillo, Peru.
Cool.
They just weren't.
Yeah.
We were very much in a beachy town. So our sneaker collection, I think, got reduced to like one pair, and then our flip-flop collection multiplied.
Because we're sandals.
That's what's in. That's what people use here. That's what people are wearing. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Also, you know, like, we obviously didn't know Spanish as well as we thought we did. We've covered that.
Yeah.
But also then the slang words that everybody's like, chévere.
Oh my God. I didn't know what half of them meant.
And I'm like, I need to learn these real quick. And then all of a sudden I'm using chévere, bacán, like, which is cool and like, which we would never. So we just adopted those real quick. We tried to shut down, as we've talked about in other episodes, parts of our American identity to just like, you know, remove the American accent at all costs, like remove when saying words that are in English, say them like a Peruvian, just like at all costs. Like, yeah, it's all stuff that I did from 1998.
Yeah, I actually thought of an example that happened in the US, not in Peru.
Okay.
So growing up in California, I remember that being from Mexico had a very negative connotation at the time, right?
Right. Yeah.
No other Latin American.
In Southern California.
In Southern California, yes. And I remember there were like always stories of like, oh, in the high school, there are some gang members and they're Mexican. And because, it was the 90s. So it was like gang members was like a kind of a social panic. People were a little like worried about that.
Yeah.
That was like the buzzword of the moment. And it was, and there was a lot of negativity associated with being from Mexico at that time. And I even remember in a moment where a girl in my class was talking about the other little third grade class. And she was like, oh yeah, in that class, like all the Mexican kids like always play together. And another girl that was there, she was like, don't call them that. That's not nice. And I was
my God.
And I was like, wait, I understand why she's calling them Mexican. They're from Mexico. Like, that's fine.
Right.
But part of my brain was like, but I also understand why that girl is saying don't call them that. That's not nice.
Right.
Because we've all heard, growing up in Southern California, we've all heard people use the word Mexican as an insult.
Right.
So that's why that little girl thinks it's a mean word to say.
Right.
So I remember interiorizing like, oh, I'm gonna make sure people know I'm Peruvian.
Right.
Like, I'm gonna make sure people know I'm from Peru because I don't want to be insulted.
A threat? Right.
I don't want to be like I don't want people to use it negatively against me if they assume I'm from Mexico and like try to use it as an insult against me. I don't want that to happen. So I'm just gonna make real sure everyone understands that I'm from Peru so that there's no confusion, And that's kind of sad. That's kind of, obviously it's a really sad thing to happen if you're from Mexico. But also I think it's kind of sad in the sense that like, now that I look back on it, I wasn't friends with any Mexicans. And like we had so much in common, right?
Yeah.
Like we both spoke Spanish. We both had families back home that we would visit in Christmas. I never got to be a part of like the Latin American community in my elementary school. All my friends were American kids. Yeah. And I think it's because of that. I think it's because there was, as a little kid, I perceived that it was negative to be associated with this. So I better just steer clear because I don't want to catch any strays.
I mean, for sure that is playing a role. We've also discussed how like it was also just somehow, even though we spoke the same language, it was also like our customs were very different, and we are quite different. Peruvians and Mexicans are like
yeah.
And so you would find also a lot of relation with maybe like the more like the locals. I don't know, and like I guess in like the stuff that we're consuming or
but I just compare it to as an adult being in the United States. It's the complete opposite. I'm like,
it's the complete opposite.
The first thing you look for is other Latin Americans. I don't care where you're from. Guatemala, let's go. Like, give me
we're all the same. In this moment, it's like we are all,
And I think it's because of that. Because as a little kid, you don't really understand. Like, oh, why are they being like so negatively perceived? Why I don't want to be associated with that because I don't want to be negatively perceived. And as an adult, you're just like, I don't care who's being negatively perceived. If you're from Latin America, like I want to hang with you.
And you could totally see just in the way that you were like, oh, I'm totally going to make sure that they realize real quick that I'm Peruvian. If you were like a little Mexican girl, you'd probably be like, what do I need? Survival. What do I need to adapt real quick? So they just kind of see me as
American.
Because I also do think there was definitely part of that. Like, I can't think of a clear example right now in my head, but for sure, we were dropping stuff from Peru to try to just assimilate.
I mean, I wasn't whipping out my Spanish at all, which is something that I do now without fear.
Exactly. Or necessarily discussing what we were like having for dinner, that our parents what we were watching. Like, we were
I wasn't
probably keeping that to ourselves.
Yeah, I wasn't sharing our particular customs
we're
or
like,
traditions.
you went to McDonald's, so did we.
I remember an example, actually. So we were we were doing, these dumb things people make elementary school kids do, which is like, I think they were like waiting on something to arrive and the teacher was killing time. And she was like, oh, we're going to talk about what we had for breakfast or something.
Oh, God.
And breakfast at our house was always like either some version of cereal or if mom had made like eggs, right?
Right.
But it was usually some version of cereal because like we preferred it over eggs anyway, right? We wanted that
Cinnamon
sugar.
Toast Crunch.
Yeah. Cookie Crisp.
So good. Cookie Crisp.
Waffle Crisp.
Waffle Crisp, the best.
The best.
The best. Basically, sugar and milk was her breakfast.
Yeah. But these are like, if I had said eggs and toast, if I had said cereal with milk, those are all like fine and American staples.
Approved.
But I remember everyone going around, like I was one of the first kids. So someone said something that I didn't understand. The kid next to me said, oh, I usually just have Wonderbread. And I was like, he said the brand. And I was like, that's such a weird answer. I remember thinking that's such a weird answer.
Right.
Because why don't you just say like bread with butter? Why don't you just say toast? I don't know. Anyway, I said cereal with milk.
Yeah.
And then the kid on my right also said Wonderbread. And then every other kid down the line said Wonderbread.
Look,
I felt like the odd man out, and I was like, "Oh my God, I should have said Wonderbread. I don't even eat Wonderbread. I think my mom buys a different brand, but I think I should have said Wonderbread. I think that was the thing I was supposed to say."
Okay, after having kids now, I can say to just repeating that nobody had Wonderbread. Nobody.
They just didn't want to do the assignment. They were literally copying the assignment.
Just like, first of all, they don't even remember. I asked my kid what he had for lunch. I pack his lunch. Yeah. I asked my kid what he had for lunch, and he'll tell me something made up. Like, not at all what I packed.
But the peer pressure, the amount of peer pressure I felt at that, of hearing 32 little kids all say Wonderbread, and I was like, well, fuck me. I'm the bitch that said cereal. It was so bad. I felt so bad about myself.
Crazy.
And it wasn't even anything ethnic. And like, you can't get more American than cereal and milk.
I said something that you guys made up.
Yeah.
And you guys
I wasn't even eating cereal in Peru. I wasn't even eating cereal until I got here. Yeah. One other thing that I wanted to mention as far as code switching goes, there's one specific experience that I remember when I was living in the UK. So I was living in the UK when Brexit happened, right? When it got voted on.
Yeah.
And I remember the day after, like, it got approved. The next morning, I'm like on my morning commute, walking down the street. And this big, tall, white, British man is also walking down the street. And as I pass him, he yells at me, "Happy Independence Day." But he yells it like with anger and like, yeah, like we really did something. And I was like, whoa. But he kept walking. But I was like,
okay.
I felt taken aback. And I was like,
yeah,
he thinks I'm British and he thinks I'm happy about this.
Yeah.
He doesn't know I'm an immigrant. He doesn't know Brexit isn't something I support.
Yeah.
And when that happened, I was like, oh, I think just for the next few days, people are going to be like, the anti-immigrant feelings people might have are going to really be bubbling up. People are going to feel really empowered by this. So let me just like not speak in Spanish over the phone as I walk down these streets, which is like, if you know me and you, that's our life. Like we do our groceries, we walk down the street, we run errands
just like
on the phone talking Spanish.
That sucks. Like the fact that you're like, I should be safe, so hide myself a little bit.
Yeah. Like
that sucks.
If something we've mentioned on this podcast over and over again is that like we love both. I love that I'm like, I'm constantly living my life between English and Spanish. I'm constantly living my life between my Peruvian and American culture. And I like that I get to do that whenever I can. And yeah, the fact that I was like, whoa, these next few days, let's just cut the Spanish. Let's just, if I'm out in public, like, let's just make sure we don't, because once again, this is also like socioeconomical and kind of racial. If people heard my American accent, they didn't care.
Oh, of course.
The Brits?
No.
Anti-immigrant hate, yes. not for Americans.
Americans.
No, you guys are like
No,
us. So there was a lot
I
going
mean,
on
and same
there.
here. Same here.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
one's
yeah, yeah.
like,
So,
let's
but I
deport
remember
the
that.
Brits. No one's saying that.
I remember that for a second being like, and thank God it was like towards the end of my stay in the UK because I came back, I think, in towards the end of 2016, and those elections were like in June or over the summer of 2016. So I only had a few months left, and then I got to come back. But yeah, that wasn't nice. Not a nice experience.
Certainly not.
So the last part of code switching that I want to talk about and bring to the table is, so in the definition of code switching, you can definitely see that there are benefits, right? There's a reason people do this. In the definition,
sure.
it says you're looking to optimize the comfort of others, perhaps to achieve a desired outcome or avoid being negatively stereotyped, right? So there is a benefit to code switching. You do it for a reason. I think something that isn't very clear in the definition, but that is still a part of it, is the cost.
Yeah.
And this is something that Michelle Mi-jung Kim talked about when she talked about like downplaying all her Koreanness and then later in life coming back to it and her realizing, wow, that was a real big cost, real big price I paid in terms of my identity. So I think that would be a little interesting to talk about. There's a really great book that talks about this specifically. It's called Black Magic. It's a book written by Chad Sanders. Chad is African American. He worked in Silicon Valley for a really long time. And in the book, he talks about how in order to be successful in Silicon Valley, he had to present as a very specific type of white man, even though he's obviously black, but he had to speak a certain way. He had to use certain slang. He had to dress a certain way. He had to behave a certain way. He had to participate in a certain type of activities. And he was very successful. And then one day he just started feeling like, no, this is like feeling really wrong. And like, this is really stressful for me. And
like putting on an act.
Yeah. And how long can you live like that? Especially when work is so much of your day, right?
Yeah.
So he started to feel the cost. And he said, okay, what if I don't do that? And he like got rid of all the code switching he was doing and started going back into his African-American identity in fullness. He's like, this is who I am. And he started being that way at work. And he found success. And he was very surprised that he found even more success than he had before. So in the book, what he does is that's what he calls black magic. So in the book, he interviews other successful African-Americans in the business sector. And he asks them about how they use their black magic and their experience with this whole thing, right? So it's a really interesting book, and it really looks at the cost of code switching, which I think is something we don't talk about enough. We kind of just like leave it as like understood that this is painful, but we don't really talk about how it's painful.
Right. I agree. I think that there isn't like the examples of like what it's actually doing to you, what pain it's actually causing. I do like when you're describing this, I haven't read the book and I don't know if this is addressed, but like it's always the like, well, okay, is it easier to drop now that you've made it, now that you've accumulated all the success, now that you've made a name for yourself?
I'm sure, yes. I'm sure that's a
part of it.
It's
certainly less scary, right, to do it then than to start off with like, no one knows me. This is what I'm seeing as successful. Like, because women can relate to this in a lot, like in the business world. I'm sure everybody's taking like, well, these are what the leaders look like. And so I do that. No shame in taking that approach because that's like what looks like to be the way. But also, God, like people can read through so much now of the bullshit that like, if you present as your authentic self, there is something so attractive about that. You know?
Yeah, but like you said earlier, like it's very hard. It's so much easier to be yourself when you have capital that you've accumulated. So you have goodwill already on your side. You're already established. You have some kind of base of support in whatever industry you're in. So you can just present how you want to present and be who you are, your authentic self. And you can like fend off whatever consequences because you're already so established in your industry. I think it's true. It's super hard when you're just starting to be like, well, I'm just going to be me. And like, hopefully
I do think
people
that
will accept it.
If like this man who then reached the top and was able to shed all the other stuff and like show who he really is. I think that's great because you're letting someone else who is like you
do
kind
it
of be that
from
way.
the beginning.
From the beginning.
Yeah.
That is how it and then when you are trying to enter an industry, to break through an industry that has a lot more people. I mean, we see that in politics, right? It's like, let's put different people because that'll hopefully pave the way. I don't know, jury's still out, but like that is the way to kind of allow for more of that.
Yeah, I think that's super important. Like you met
so shed when you get to the top, guys. Shed it.
Yeah. I mean, yes, be your true authentic self. I think that happens a lot. Like I see it in most obviously in pop culture. When you said women know about this all the time, the first thing that popped into my head was all my pop girlies.
Right.
Because I was like, yeah, when Alanis Morissette and Fiona Apple were like, specifically Alanis Morissette, when she was writing like breakup songs, people were like, oh, but she's just a little kid. Oh, she only knows how to write about breakup songs because that's girls, right? And we're always so dismissive of girls' interests. So it's like, oh, that's all she knows. Girls, that's all they care about. Like guys and writing about guys. And they were so dismissive about her writing and her music, right? Same thing. Similar version of that happened when Taylor Swift came along. Oh, all she does is write about her boyfriends and write about little breakup songs. So that can't possibly be good. That can't possibly be art. And I think because those women got all that flack, but still kept on doing it and being successful at it, now you have all the little teeny boppers. Like you have your Olivia Rodrigos and your Sabrina Carpenters and your Chaperones, and they're all writing breakup songs, and they're all writing about heartbreak, and no one is saying, oh, that's not art. They do is write about breakup songs. That's not art. Because you have all these other women that proved like, yeah, we do just write about breakup songs, and guess what? Most art is about heartbreak. That's the best type of art. This is art. We're going to be successful at it. We're going to win awards doing it. And so now everyone else
are
coming
gonna
up
feel related to it. They are gonna want to listen because we are all experiencing heartbreak. All of the challenges that they sing about. Every woman is like, yes, like I feel heard.
Yeah, this
like,
is an industry. This is a
obviously,
movement.
It's like these are our anthems. That's why they're successful.
Yeah. So I see that. I see like, oh, look at how they don't have to explain. I write my own songs. They don't have to explain. Like, I remember people would question, do you really write your own songs? Like, in the 90s, any female artist, like, does she really? Who was writing them? And now all these girls just come up and they're like, oh, yeah, I write my own songs. This is what I write about. It's about my life. And people just accept it now as like, oh, yeah, we've seen that before. We know that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, went on a rant. Had a lot of fun doing it.
It was good. It was a good rant. Let's move on to our current faves. This is a segment where we share something either Peruvian or American that we're currently really into, we're loving, or we're missing. My current fave is, I might be a little late to this, but like every other person in their 30s, I'm super into espresso martinis.
Oh my God. I can't with the espresso martinis.
I think I'm 6 months too late, but I've arrived.
6 months? You're like a year late.
I don't know. I feel like it was a last summer thing, so I don't know.
It was like anyway, 2 summers ago thing, and last summer it picked back up again. And I think people are still doing it, but like...
Yay, I love it. I'm into it now. I couldn't do it 2 years ago because I was pregs. So here we are.
Okay.
I love them. Like, I was at a work trip this last week, and it was like there were long days. And at the night, like there was always like a little like dinner party or whatever. The perfect nightcap for me was the espresso martini.
Oh my God.
It's delicious. I'm sorry, do you not love them? I love them.
No.
And the little, what?
I'm going to let you have your moment and rave about how great they are for you, but I hate them. I'm completely against it. First of all, the first thing I think about when someone says espresso martini, like we're at a party or a club or like everyone's like really decked out and someone orders an espresso martini, I'm like, oh, she wants to shit her pants later.
No. Ew.
That's all I get.
Why?
Because it's a shit ton of like concentrated coffee.
So you said what an espresso martini does to you, but I guarantee you,
I don't drink them. I mean,
I feel like it's kind of like, how like the Europeans have an espresso after dinner. I mean, they don't go and shit their pants.
I know, but it's alcohol and caffeine.
No, but it is
just
like
sounds
I
like
would
such
say
a bomb to your liver. That's what it sounds
I would
like.
say like either you have one at the beginning of the night or one at the end of the night, and that's probably it. Like I couldn't imagine.
Oh no, in
having
New York,
multiple-
this is my point. In New York, I see girls get rounds and rounds. Like they're on their third round of espresso martinis. I'm like, what are you doing to your body? You're burning a hole in your stomach.
No, that seems terrible because what are you supposed to do? Not go to bed ever? Like what is going on? For me, it's like it's the best. Like either like I said, like at the beginning, I would have it like as a little nightcap, and it would not like interrupt my sleep. Like I would just like bye guys, and then I would go to bed because people would stay on and drink. Also, like for me, it's like again one and done because like I couldn't imagine.
Okay,
like,
I think
I
can
would
get
just
on
be
board.
out.
I can get on board with one and done. I can get
For
on
sure.
board
I mean,
with
I
that.
think that's the intention. I don't think.
Listen, like you said, it's gotten real popular. And I see people pulling them out at the bars, and I'm like, what are all these girls going to go to the like the line for the bathroom is going to be huge later. Like this is insane. What's happening at the bar?
This is terrible. No. Well, yes, that's what I'm into right now. I hope it sticks. It's so good. Loving it.
Well, I'm glad for you. You keep
Doesn't
doing
sound
you.
like it. Doesn't sound
well,
like
I'm just never going to do it. But my current fave is, you have to bear with me for this one, okay?
Oh, God.
So my current fave is not needing prescriptions to buy medicine. I miss it.
Oh, okay. I
So-
was like, but you need one.
Exactly.
Right.
That's why I miss it because
I mean, I beg to differ. The science community, beg to differ. The medical community right now is going to be like, because it's not a good thing.
But
People
that's why
abuse
I'm
it.
saying you have to bear with me. You got to let me explain a little bit. Peruvian pharmacies are a bit lax in their control of prescription medication.
Yeah.
Not of all prescription medication. Like if you're trying to buy like mood altering drugs, if you're trying to buy painkillers, anything that's like addictive, you're going to need a prescription. They're going to be really like hard, like very regulated in that sense. However, birth control and antibiotics are over the counter in Peru.
Yeah.
And-
Antibiotics should really not be over the counter.
Yeah.
They really should not.
As a 38-year-old single woman, I'm not buying painkillers. I'm not buying anything like that. But I am buying birth control every single month.
Right.
And I have PCOS. So I'm prone to cysts. So I have to keep that in check, right? And so I have found over the years, I discovered this one specific pill that has the right balance of components that works for me, that keeps me cyst-free, right? Mm-hmm. And it's this really, really cheap pill. Luciana, it cost 15 soles in Peru. A box.
Right.
Like so cheap. And I'm like, great.
That's like $4.
Yeah. I'm like, this is perfect for me. It's over the counter. Every time I go to Peru, I get some. Every time my mom comes over to visit, she brings me some. So this is where things get hairy for me.
I mean, you just have to fill up the prescription here. That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
And then they send it to your local pharmacy. And
Yes, but I haven't done any of that because I always had my little Peruvian pills.
This is on you.
Are you going to let me? Let you talk about how great espresso martinis were.
Okay.
So you have to bear, once again, you
I
have to
feel
bear
like
with
this is very different, but cool.
No, it's
Okay.
not very different. Okay. Because it's also a specific thing that I like, and maybe other people don't disagree. So our mom is supposed to come in a week, right? Mumsy's coming for a visit. Mm-hmm. But she might not be able to make it because she hasn't gotten her passport back from the embassy. Once again, immigrant problems. Americans will not relate. You can use your passport to go anywhere. Peruvians need a visa to leave their house. Like that's just how it works.
Yeah.
So my mom, I'm going to miss her. I'm going to miss her if she's not able to come. Mumsy, I love you. But I will miss my box of pills even more. Because my mom literally has like 11 boxes of these pills that she wants to bring me.
This is such an easy fix, though.
But here's the thing. My lazy ass doesn't want to call my gynecologist.
You don't want to pick up the phone.
No,
this
I
is
don't
what
wanna-
we're getting at.
Exactly. My lazy ass doesn't want to call my gynecologist to book an extemporaneous appointment. Like, come on, I have my mandatory appointments, and that's when I go and see my gynecologist. I don't want to see her extemporaneously just because I need to then go, sit down, ask for a prescription, and be like, could you please make sure it's exactly the components that are in this little foreign box, please? Because here's the thing. No woman needs her menstrual cycle to be fucked with.
No,
and I don't want my menstrual cycle to be fucked with just because, they can't do exactly that component in this country. They use this or they do that or it's like that. And I don't want to be on the other end of that, being like, why all of a sudden do I have all these symptoms during like my period? And why do I have a cyst now?
I feel I get it. I think it's more like the inconvenience. This is like really unknown. Like, why do I have to do this extra lift when I already have it figured out? I think that you are on the cusp of like, I still have my health care in my other country, even though I'm living and I know a lot of people stay in that lane for years. Like I have my friends who would like, I'm going to go back home, so I'm going to go see the dentist. I'm like, you live in the United States. Yeah. And they're like, but my dentist for my whole life is in France, and I go back to France, and that's when I see him twice a year. And I'm like, you really need to find a local provider. Like that is what I'm getting at.
But here's the thing. I'm sure that I can. I'm sure that I'm a capable human. I can do that. I can go to the gynecologist. And I'm sure even after trial and error, we can find the right mix for me of pills.
Competent doctor
Here's the thing. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go through that. I do enough admin in my life. I don't need to add to the admin that I need to do.
Well,
especially if it involves calling my gynecologist, having an extra meeting. Who wants to have an extra meeting with their gynecologist in a year? You already go enough and get to come on.
Well, that's on you. You should have gone on your annual wellness visit. And you know what? This is the thing. Like you are in this process of like leaving your doctors in Peru and transitioning to this. And that's what you just got to bite the bullet and do it and find all of your health providers. And then you'll just be automated.
I disagree. I feel like the process is gradual and should be gradual. And I have transitioned every single provider.
But here you're waiting on my mom to drop off your meds.
Yes.
It's not ideal. It could just be, your local pharmacy delivering.
I feel like you should transition when there's the least amount of friction. So like everything, whenever it was easiest, like the dentist, super easy because you have to see them anyway. All it is one call and you have to go anyway. The gynecologist, I have a gynecologist here that I see.
That's when you should have done it in your wellness visit.
When I talked to her, we talked about my birth control and I showed her and she's like, these are great. If they're working for you, she said, if these are working for you, I wouldn't touch that. I would just keep using that.
Okay, so can you give me a prescription? Because I'm running out.
That's
the message.
I've never needed it.
Okay, but I'm going to have to wait for my mom to bring them from Peru. And if she decides to not come.
Well, that's the thing. My mom comes once a year and she brings me like 13 boxes.
I'm sure your doctor will be able to refill the exact same
She will be able to.
Migrating your health care to like, okay. And I think like, my friend was like, I just don't know if I'm staying here. So I don't know if I want to fully I might only be here for
different.
2 more years.
If you don't know if you're staying here.
She's been here like 20. I'm like, girl, I don't know what you're doing. Like you really need to get a local
I think
dentist.
you stayed here. Yeah.
But, sure.
No, here's my thing. I'm a lazy girl and I will only do things when forced. So guess what? If Mumsy arrives next week and she brings me my 13 boxes of pills, not seeing my guy, no. Not seeing my guy, no. Not until I have to.
Okay. So having finished our conversation, how did this one land for you?
So in talking about this topic, I think what I've come to appreciate is that the code switching that I have experienced, which was like that medium version of code switching through childhood.
Kind of like an automatic almost.
It's been ever present. The code switching has been a constant in my life from a very young age because I experience it here in the US, but I also experience it in Peru, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there are few breaks from it. So while it's not as intense maybe as other people might experience, it's like this, it's everywhere. It's everywhere I am. There are few places where I'm like, I never have to think about it in front of XYZ people.
I understand what you mean because it's almost like, okay, you can relax, I would challenge the part about like how much we're thinking about it, because I actually, after our conversation, was thinking like, how much do I do this still? Like, do I do this still? Obviously, you do. Like,
but not as much.
Not as much, because I think that, as we've said multiple times in different topics, one gets more comfortable with who they are at age. You get more sort of like, well, this is me and this is how I'm going to be. And I'm, like when you're younger, you're kind of like, am I this? Am I that? And I think that we were doing it without really thinking about it or knowing that we were doing it. It's very much survival, right? Like, you want to fit in, you want to be accepted, you want to signal to the crew, the people that you're with, that you're part of this, that you belong here too, that you get this, right? And I feel that, like, now for me, if I really think about it, like, in a professional setting, like in corporate America that I'm a part of, that's where I think I probably do it the most. And I would imagine that's where most men and women do it the most, because you have to present a certain way, like immigrant or non-immigrant. And then kind of like when I go back to Peru, a little bit, because I'm more Americanized now. Like, I get to use these words that make me feel part of these people, talk about like the music and stuff that they're into. And then back here, kind of the same, and it kind of feels nice to dabble in both. I feel like in the only place where it feels like work is in the corporate setting, in the work setting. I don't feel it like a lift in other situations. But yes, I do understand still, even those things are true, that you can have this group of people where your Americanness come out, your Peruvianness can come out, and it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
And that's nice.
What I meant. Also, what you're saying about like, oh, you feel it more in the corporate world and not necessarily in other spaces.
Yeah.
I feel like that is 100% true.
Yeah.
That's what I think I was referring to when I said, like, there's different versions. There's like harsher versions of it.
Yeah.
And then like lighter versions of it. And I feel like it was much harder for me, or harsher versions that I experienced were more as a kid in like school settings. And then my entire like corporate life has taken place in Peru.
Feels so far away now, doesn't it?
Which still required some code switching. Like, I worked in the Peruvian government. I also worked for a time in media in Peru.
No, for sure.
They each required, I also worked at a law firm. Like, each space
requires
looked favorably or less favorably at that American side of me. I'm like, oh, here no one is accepting of this or even understands it. I need to tone it down. Yeah. So yes, I do feel like in situations, of course it's your job. So there's more stakes. There's more things at risk.
Exactly. I think that's why we do it, because in high stakes situation, like when we were younger, it was survival. It was fitting in.
It felt like life or death. It's like, if I have no friends at school, I'm dead.
I'm dead.
Like,
exactly.
Dead in the
water.
Right
now, it's like job security. That's the high stakes, right?
Yes.
I was thinking about it now, like if I were to go somewhere really foreign, like move, like relocate, not a vacay, like relocate.
Yeah, relocate somewhere new, completely
and
different.
It's like you're being part of the community, making friends, presumably a job. Like, you would really have to, and then it would be really conscious, right? The doing it, and that's, again, in high stakes situations, that's where it's really, well, this is the thing that I must do. Obviously, you know who you are, and I think that there are now, like, you're not going to compromise who you are, but you still obviously need to go out, make friends, integrate.
But what I wanted to, the point that I was getting at with the different like levels of it is like, well, yes, there are harsher versions that you might experience at one point or another. I actually feel really lucky in one sense that I haven't had to experience like the harsher versions of it, only in specific moments. And as I've gotten older, obviously it's been even less and less. Yeah. Also because I'm not in as like high stakes pressurized situations where, really important things are depending on me fitting in or not. That's not happening as much anymore. But even so, there is still this how come I feel so much more comfortable, and how come there's this extra level of just ease where I am fully accepted with both? Because in the end, that's what it is. Like the opposite of code switching is just never even thinking about it. And that's what I started thinking about after our conversation was, where do I find that? Where am I not code switching? Because I've noticed that I don't do it as much, that I don't need to anymore as much, that I'm older and I feel more confident. But I started thinking, okay, so when don't I do it? When do I actually feel 100% comfortable and I don't even think about it? And I'm like,
my guess would be in Peru.
It's more than a place, actually. It's people.
For sure.
There are certain people in my life that I don't care where I am. Exactly. Peruvians that fully accept all my quirky weirdness.
Yeah. I wonder if that too will change with time. You know, it's kind of like a no-brainer that in the place where we've grown up, where we've where we've spent our 20s, around those people is where we would be our most comfortable self, because they've seen the whole discovery. They've seen
they've seen us through all the stages of life.
All of that. And so it's kind of like, well, you guys have seen it all. I can just be whatever version, because you guys are going to accept and love.
And also, the culture that we're asking them to accept is better known to them.
Yes.
Like everyone, because of like Hollywood and movies, like the US exports its culture very successfully around the world.
No.
Peru doesn't.
No. Yeah.
So it's much easier for a Peruvian to be like, oh, I see what they even understand the things we say or do sometimes that are kind of American. They know, they've seen it elsewhere. An American has never.
I wonder if we would have done our 20s here, if this would be the place, if these would be the people where we are our most.
Probably.
I would think there is something about like watching someone grow up and like going through that moment, those years with that person, that like makes you just more accepting.
Even in hearing us talk about it now, I'm thinking like, wow, we really are on like the lighter side of the spectrum of
like,
this.
People
which is like, once again, so grateful for it.
Yeah.
Because we are talking about like, oh, who do I feel like we've gotten to that place where it's like, oh, who do I feel more comfortable with? That's now what I'm talking about. It's not like feel I need to do this now or else in my job I will be fired or I won't be promoted.
Yeah, dropping the name, you know, changing the name, altering like what you look like. If we had been from another part of Peru where like we lived on the coast, we had access to like Western.
Yeah, we didn't speak Quechua, you know?
No, and even like clothing, like all of our, like we had access to a lot of what the U.S. had to offer that trickled down to Peru.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a big lift of like what we had to change or adopt, you know?
Yeah, I even think like in having kids, because that would be the other big aspect. One is work, but the other high stakes place is like, what if because of your culture or because of who you are, you see like other kids or other parents not wanting to necessarily socialize with your kid?
Yeah.
You know? Because of like the religion that you are, or because of like your background or where you're from, or the fact he doesn't get invited to like the parties or the things, and what you would have to do, how you would have to try to get in with the moms and like change yourself and present yourself in a more American way so that they can embrace you and your kid. Like that would be,
and that would be heavily dependent on where you are too in the US. Like we really have only tapped the surface of that, you and I, and I'm grateful for that.
And let me tell you, it's been difficult enough.
Not
so I
asking
can't
for
even
more.
imagine.
Not
can't
asking
even
for
imagine more. Because the lot that I got to experience of code switching was complicated enough. I did knots in my head. Like it was too much for me anyway. You know? And as the Christians say, God gives you what you can handle. You know? And he was like, this one, she weak. She weak. She can't take more.
We'll just give her the sprinkles. Yeah.
Exactly. That wraps it up for us today. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and check us out on Instagram at Where We Land Pod. Hasta la vista, babies.
Ciao, ciao.
Thanks for tuning in. Now go check out another episode.
At Where We Land, we know some immigrant experiences are harder than others, especially for those in the margins of our current legal system. If you would like to help, we encourage you to support organizations that provide services for immigrants and champion their rights. You can find a list of those organizations in the show notes.